Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere warm, weird, and wonderfully green. You're lying back under a velvet Egyptian sky stars, blinking lazily overhead as a soft breeze rustles papyrus reeds. Around you, the low murmur of the Nile flows like a lullaby, thick with lotus fragrance and the croaks of invisible frogs. The air smells faintly of dates, river clay, and lettuce. Yep, that cool, crunchy thing on your sandwich. But tonight, it's not just salad, it's seduction, it's spiritual, and it's seriously strange. Because here's the thing: in ancient Egypt, lettuce wasn't boring. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't even just food, it was famous a leafy green, rumored to stir passions and please the gods. You're about to wander through temples where lettuce was worshipped tombs, where it was painted beside lovers, and feasts where it winked suggestively from the plate. By the end of this journey, you might never look at Caesar salad the same way again. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you all drift off from. Now dim, the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand barefoot on warm earth, the soles of your feet pressing gently into tilled Nile soil. It's midnight, but the harvest doesn't sleep. Not here, not now. Around you, flickering torches cast soft gold across orderly rows of lettuce, dozens, maybe hundreds, each leaf fanning out like a tiny hand offering something secret. The stalks shimmer with dew. You lean closer. The scent is crisp, fresh, but also earthy. Sensual in a way you didn't expect. This is no ordinary garden. It belongs to the priests of Min god of fertility and virility. And this, the lettuce, is their sacred crop. The priests move quietly, robes swishing like moth wings. One places a single head of lettuce in a woven basket lined with linen. He bows reverent. Another holds a bronze blade glinting. You watch him cut a leaf at its base. A milky sap beads at the stem, thick white, almost suggestive. You step back. You've probably eaten this stuff in a wrap without a second thought. But here, it's not food. It's flirtation. It's medicine. It's a message to the gods. In this world, everything carries a symbol. The Nile flood's rebirth, a lotus resurrection, a lettuce. You wouldn't guess it, but sex. Yep. The ancient Egyptians linked this crunchy little plant with stamina, masculine energy, and well a long night. Why, for starters, look at it. Romaine, the variety favored in these rituals, grows tall and straight. Its sap oozes white when broken. The symbolism practically writes itself, and the Egyptians loved their metaphors juicy and obvious. But it goes deeper. You follow a path lit by oil lamps toward the temple gates. Beyond them, limestone walls tower overhead, etched with hieroglyphs of men in erect figure, very literally holding a lettuce stalk in one hand. No subtlety there. And yet, despite the stone-carved winks and nods, there's a serenity to it all. The Egyptians didn't see sensuality as something shameful. Fertility was divine, necessary, even noble. And the lettuce. It was a bridge between earth and sky, body and spirit. You reach the inner court. Incense burns low in bronze basins, trailing smoke that smells faintly of cinnamon bark. A priest chants something low and rhythmic. You can't understand the words, but you feel their weight. He lays lettuce beside offerings of honey cakes and beer. Nearby, a painted fresco shows men in a garden lettuce stalks rising like soldiers behind him. It's weirdly peaceful, like the plant itself carries a hush. Modern historians still debate whether the aphrodisiac reputation came first, or if men's association with virility gave the lettuce its power. Some think the plant had actual medicinal effects, maybe a mild psychoactive compound that induced calm or arousal. Others argue it was all symbolic, a case of ritual meaning bleeding into daily life. Either way, it stuck. You wander into the priest's herbarium where dried plants hang in bundles from ceiling beams. You see coriander, mint, blue lotus, and lettuce pressed flat between papyrus sheets. There's a recipe inked beside it for passion renewed, eat at dusk. You can almost hear the ancient flirtation. Hey babe, want to split a lettuce? Oh, okay, maybe not in those words, but the sentiment's there. A cat brushes past your leg. You jump slightly, then laugh. Even here, even now, the sacred and the silly walk side by side. And lettuce somehow straddles both worlds. You leave the temple garden, your feet crunching softly on the gravel path. Overhead stars wheel slowly across the sky. You're still holding a single lettuce leaf. It feels cool in your hand, alive somehow. Is it magic? Probably not, but it feels magical. As you stroll back toward the Nile, you wonder, how did such a humble leaf become a bridge to the divine? A stand-in for desire, a gift fit for gods. And more curiously, how did we forget the Nile laps gently at your ankles as you step onto a small wooden bark, its surface polished smooth by years of ceremonial crossings? A priest rose in silence, his back steady and rhythmic under the silver light of a full moon. Behind you, the temple fades into darkness, and ahead the river splits like a promise. You're heading upstream toward Fayum, a lush, marshy region known even in the ancient world as Egypt's lettuce basket. This place tucked in the belly of the Nile Valley was a green marvel. With its sprawling canal systems and sediment-rich soil, Fayum was practically a salad dreamscape. Lettuce grew here not just in sacred plots, but in long, orderly fields, managed by farmers who, let's be honest, probably didn't think too hard about its divine potency. For them it was livelihood, and for Egypt it was obsession. You arrive just as the sun yawns over the horizon, smearing gold across palm leaves. Farmers are already at work, men and women hunched over rows of romaine, their hands quick and confident. You crouch beside one, an older woman with sun-warmed skin and a crescent moon tattooed near her ear. She hands you a leaf freshly snapped from the stalk. It's cool, crisp, wet with dew. You bite, and surprise, it's bitter. Not unpleasant, but definitely not what your modern supermarket tongue expects. See, ancient lettuce wasn't the watered-down cousin we know today. The Egyptians grew a wild romaine variety, Lactuca cereola, known for its bold taste and milky sap. And that milky sap, it wasn't just symbolic. It actually contained compounds with sedative effects. The Greeks would later call it sleep lettuce. Which kind of makes you wonder, were those romantic temple rites just one long nap waiting to happen? You watch as the farmers use copper tools to gently uproot a particularly prized head. It's longer than the others, almost a foot tall and perfectly upright. One man murmurs, half-joking, "Men would approve." The others laugh softly, but there's reverence too. In these parts, lettuce still carries a whisper of myth. The produce is bundled into reed baskets and loaded onto donkeys, bound for the markets of Memphis and Thebes. There it will be sold fresh, dried, pickled, or turned into, get this, lettuce oil. Yep. A few ancient texts mention lettuce seeds being pressed for a slick, slightly nutty oil. Historians still debate whether this oil was used for cooking cosmetics or cue eyebrow raise intimate purposes. Because of course they do. You wander past a shaded stall where a woman sells bunches wrapped in linen. She offers one with a wink, saying, "For strength." Her tone could mean anything. You smile, take the bundle, and keep walking. Everywhere the plant hums with quiet power. It's not loud or flashy like frankincense or myrrh. It's not intoxicating like blue lotus or beer. It's subtle, suggestive. The kind of thing that whispers, not shouts. And maybe that's what made it so seductive to the ancients. You pass a scribal school where children learn to write by copying market lists and medical prescriptions. One papyrus reads, "To rouse a sluggish man, feed him lettuce and figs." Another, "To calm a restless wife, serve cold lettuce with date wine." It's part folk medicine, part flirty advice column, and honestly, kind of charming. You peek into a modest home where a mother slices lettuce for breakfast. The children protest. It's bitter. She shrugs. Bitterness strengthens the heart, she says. An old proverb, apparently. You chew on that. Not the lettuce, the phrase. Strength in bitterness. There's poetry there, hidden beneath the crunch. As you wander back toward the river, the sun now high and hot, a memory rises, the priest with his bronze blade, slicing that sap-heavy stalk in the moonlight. It's the same plant, yet here in the fields of Fayum, it's gentler, less sacred, more practical, but no less powerful. It makes you think. How often do we separate the mystical from the mundane? In ancient Egypt, they didn't. The lettuce on your plate was the same lettuce in the temple. The act of eating was also an offering, and a garden that was holy ground. You board another boat, this one larger, shaded by linen sails. As it pushes off, you look back at the green expanse. The fields shimmer in the midday heat, rows upon rows reaching skyward. Silent, proud, upright. Kind of like a god, or at least a god's favorite snack. The boat rocks gently as you drift south along the Nile, lulled by the rhythmic splash of oars and the whisper of reeds. You lean back, gaze skyward, and spot an ibis gliding across the hazy blue. A sacred bird, sacred sky, sacred everything. And yet, all you can think about is salad. Because now you're heading into the temples. You arrive at the grand complex of Kam Ambo, a rare double temple shared by Sobek, the crocodile god, and Horus, the falcon. But what really draws your attention isn't the crocodile mummies in the basement, or the falcon statues glaring with quartz eyes. It's the courtyard garden. A royal plot of orderly rows, each one carefully tended, and nestled among them like a shy guest at a party, the lettuce. This isn't farmland lettuce. It's ceremonial lettuce. Grown under strict conditions, watered with sacred water, harvested only by clean hands. You crouch and brush your fingers along its leaves. They're firmer than expected, upright, proud, exuding the kind of ancient seriousness usually reserved for gold or blood. A priest in white linen approaches and gives you a nod. Min's plant, he says. Right. Minasnar, the god of fertility and virility. Think towering headdresses, erect phallus, massive statues that leave nothing to the imagination. He's the divine embodiment of potency harvest and the sacred dance between earth and man. And lettuce, it's his chosen offering. You follow the priest into a side chamber, its walls coated in cool plaster flickering with torchlight. The air smells like stone and myrrh. On one wall, a massive relief depicts Min receiving a basket of lettuce from a pharaoh. The lettuce is carved with exaggerated height and stature, standing tall, almost heroic. Historians still argue whether this association was strictly symbolic or reflected real ritual practice. Some believe the lettuce's milky sap, remember, that was seen as mirroring Min's own divine fluid. Others suggest it was about life force regeneration, even resurrection. All you know is once you see it, you can't unsee it. Lettuce as a fertility beacon. But here's where things get a little cheeky. A set of papyri from the Ptolemaic period mention lettuce being served at temple feasts, raw, grilled, or even soaked in date wine. And not just for the priests. No, this was sacred snacking for the masses. Imagine going to church and being handed a lettuce wrap for strength and passion. Not quite communion wafers, huh? One scroll goes further. It suggests that women seeking to conceive would eat lettuce daily while praying to Min. Another details how young men would fast for 3 days, then eat a special lettuce salad under moonlight to receive the blessing of firmness. Take from that what you will. You wander deeper into the temple and come across a small altar, set with dried herbs, blue lotus petals. And yes, wilted lettuce leaves. A priestess is tending the offering, her fingers delicate and practiced. She looks up and says, "For renewal." Her voice is soft but carries weight like she's said it 1,000 times. You ask if lettuce is still sacred. She smiles, half amused, half wistful. All things sacred until they are forgotten. Outside, a young boy runs by with a stalk of lettuce taller than he is chasing a goat. It's a ridiculous scene, but it drives the point home. Lettuce lived a double life in ancient Egypt. In the temple, it was holy. In the village, it was lunch. And yet the two worlds weren't separate. You remember the relief's Min with his hand raised in eternal salute, flanked by rows of lettuce like a green honor guard. You picture the feasts, the offerings, the whispered prayers over bitter greens. The priest's solemn nod, the farmer's laughter. It all blends into one. Because in Egypt, divinity didn't float above everyday life, it grew in it. In gardens, on plates, in baskets tied with rope. The gods weren't distant, they were present. Tactile, crisp. You pass a wall inscription translated centuries ago by a French explorer. It reads, "Lettuce gives vigor to men and life to the land." A simple phrase, but somehow eternal. By the time you return to the river, the sky has softened to lavender. A heron skims the surface, and a date seller yawns on the shore. You carry a stalk of sacred lettuce, not out of obligation, but curiosity. Will it do anything? Probably not. But in this world of ancient belief and quiet magic, sometimes the gesture is enough. You take a bite. It's still bitter, still divine. The Nile fades behind you as your feet crunch over dry path and broken pottery shards. You're deeper inland now, wandering through a ruined estate, once a nobleman's villa, now half-eaten by time and desert wind. A single column remains upright as if stubbornly refusing to bow out. At the villa's edge, a sunken patch of land reveals what was once a garden. Or maybe a kitchen garden, to be precise. You squint and imagine raised beds, irrigation channels, woven reed fencing. In your mind's eye, you can just see servants in linen kilts weeding under the sun, hauling water and trimming lettuce. Yes, even the backyard version had its rituals. Lettuce wasn't only temple offering material, it made its way into daily Egyptian life too, just with a less dramatic soundtrack. The common man's lettuce was usually of the leafier kind, not the bold, upright men's lettuce. And rather than symbolic virility, it was appreciated for something much more practical: digestion. Ancient Egyptian medical papyri, like the Eber's papyrus, list lettuce as a treatment for stomach ailments, sleep troubles, and somewhat ironically, loss of libido. That's right. The same plant that represented raw divine lust was also the cure for when you just weren't feeling it. Balance. You pick your way through the garden and pause at a crumbled cooking hearth. Here things get domestic. Clay jars, some still intact, lie half buried in the sand. One even bears a faint green pigment, possibly once used to store lettuce soaked in wine or vinegar. Culinary historians, yes. That's a job. Think lettuce was often served chilled with garlic and mint, or even stewed gently in goose fat. And that's not all. Turns out lettuce was also given to children. Not as a treat, definitely not sugary, but to calm the inner winds, as one old text puts it. Honestly, if you've ever been around a sugar-charged 8-year-old, you might consider trying that too. A scroll fragment discovered near Thebes tells of a matriarch preparing a moon meal for her family. Among the items listed bread, beer figs, and soft lettuce cooled in water from the Eastern Canal. There's something poetic there, a kind of gentle luxury in taking the edge off the day with chilled greens and moonlight. Historians still debate how widespread this lettuce practice was. Was it only for elites? Did farmers bother with it? Or did regional styles emerge: spicier lettuce in the Delta, sweeter strains near Nubia? The written record is patchy, and the lettuce itself, well, not the most resilient artifact. Still, evidence persists. A painted fragment from a tomb in Saqqara shows a banquet scene. 2 women reclining on cushions, raising cups, with a servant presenting, a bunch of neatly arranged lettuce leaves. It's not the main dish, it's not flashy, but it's there, center table, given its moment of leafy glory. And just when you're wondering if lettuce had any limits, you find a reference to lettuce perfume. Yes. During the New Kingdom, perfumers occasionally infused oils with lettuce essence, likely for skin treatments, or maybe even aromatic strength rituals. One faded note hints at lettuce oils for the chest, said to stir the warmth in the heart. Whether it worked is anyone's guess, but it smells like the ancient version of bath and body sprays marketed as energy. You sit now on a warm stone, letting your thoughts drift. The desert wind stirs up grit. A lizard scurries across a nearby shadow, and the scent in the air dusty dry, but with a hint of something green. A modern botanist once recreated an Egyptian garden from ancient seed samples. What surprised her most? How fragrant the lettuce was. Not the bland, mass-farmed stuff we know, but leafy, pungent, almost spicy. A plant that made its presence known. It makes sense somehow. Egypt wasn't about excess. It was about balance, harmony, ma'at. So a plant that symbolized lust and calm feasting and medicine gods and gardens. That's not strange, that's the point. You rise and brush off your hands the stones warm beneath your fingers. Somewhere in the distance, a reed flute begins to play. Someone's practicing. Maybe for a festival, maybe just for the breeze. You pass a faded wall painting, barely legible now, where a small child holds out a lettuce leaf to a baboon. It's unclear if the baboon is interested. You laugh to yourself. Some scenes apparently are eternal. And as you walk away from the estate back toward the river path, you start to realize this wasn't just about lettuce, it never was. It was about how the ordinary becomes sacred, how daily life glows under a ritual sun. It was about the belief that even something as small, as soft, as fleeting as a leaf could hold the power of gods. You're walking again, your steps crunching over sun-baked soil as the sun slides lower across the desert sky. The Nile glimmers off to your left, soft and unhurried, like a lazy ribbon of memory. But ahead, something different rises, a low stone structure with no roof. Its doorways tall and narrow. You pause, knowing exactly what this is. A physician's house, or rather a priest-physician's house. In ancient Egypt, medicine wasn't just science, it was ceremony, spell, and spirit. And lettuce, it sat right on the boundary of all three. As you step inside the crumbled clinic, the walls whisper stories. Here patients once lay on linen mats. Here priests prepared poultices. Here beneath reed-covered awnings, herbs were crushed with basalt stones, their smells tangling in the air. Lettuce was one of the quieter ingredients. Not flashy like mandrake, not rare like frankincense, but reliable. A go-to. The Eber's Papyrus, written around 1550 BCE, lists over 700 medical prescriptions, and lettuce shows up more than once. Used to calm nerves, reduce fever, and even purify the womb. Some recipes called for its juice to be mixed with honey. Others instructed boiling its leaves with juniper and placing the warm mash over the stomach. You crouch near a faded inscription where one line reads, "To cool the fire in the blood, let him eat of the nightleaf slow chilled." That's lettuce, by the way. Nightleaf? Poetic and practical. But not every recipe was so straightforward. Some physicians believed that lettuce, because it stood tall and bled milky sap when cut, had a connection to male potency. Others, however, said it cooled the passions and made the body quiet. The contradiction baffled even the ancient experts. Historians still argue whether lettuce was truly thought to stoke desire or subdue it. You smile. Maybe it did both. Maybe it just depended on how it was prepared or who was asking. One particularly odd instruction appears in the Kahun Gynecological Papyrus for a woman troubled by restless womb. Press lettuce juice into her navel while speaking words of cooling. Let's just say it raises more questions than it answers. You move further into the room and spot a low table burnished smooth from use. Here, a young priest once mashed lettuce into a paste with ochre used to draw protective symbols on the skin. Not to eat, not to heal, but to ward off nightmares. Yeah, nightmares. In a culture where dreams were doors and spirits walked at dusk, even your sleep needed guardians. And if those guardians happened to be painted in lettuce-based pigment, so be it. You find a corner with broken jars, one labeled in faded hieratic script. You try to make it out for the 5th night of the fever. Give leaf with barley water, then speak the words. Simple. Strange. Incredibly human. Even animals weren't left out. Veterinary scrolls suggest that lettuce juice was sometimes fed to donkeys, especially ones that refused to mate. The ancients apparently had a whole lettuce-based matchmaking system for their livestock. Because of course they did. And then there were the funerary texts. One thin sliver of tomb writing barely there tells of a dead scribe buried with seeds of lettuce so that he may rise in strength in the next life. The lettuce wasn't just a snack for the afterworld, it was fuel, symbol, a signal to the gods. This one wants to come back strong. You stand and glance toward the far end of the room, where a papyrus rack once held scrolls. Most are lost to time. But if you listen, you can almost hear the crackle of palm fiber under your fingers, the rustle of parchment detailing another remedy, another chant, another dose of lettuce between prayers. And outside a patient waits, eyes closed, hand clutching a bundle of leaves wrapped in cloth. Is it a cure, a charm, a placebo? You'll never know. But she believes. And that belief, it's more potent than any potion. As you exit the crumbling clinic, the wind picks up slightly, rustling through nearby papyrus reeds. You can't help but imagine a young healer running down this same path, arms full of greens, breathless with purpose. Maybe she was preparing a love charm? Maybe a sleep draft? Maybe just dinner. All those futures, all those remedies carried in leaves we now barely notice. You glance up at the first stars appearing overhead. Silent, patient, watching. And in that moment, the quiet medicine of lettuce seems like less of a joke and more of a miracle. You keep walking, the dust rising softly behind your heels as twilight deepens into something slower, silkier. The air cools, the shadows lengthen, and then you smell it sweet, earthy, sharp. Someone nearby is cooking. Someone. You follow your nose through a narrow village path flanked by mud brick homes. Faint flickers of flame dance through doorway slits. Laughter echoes soft and distant like a lullaby sung just out of reach. This is Egypt's domestic heart, and tonight you're invited to dinner. The family matriarch, a wiry woman with braided hair and a steady hand, welcomes you with a nod. She gestures to a woven mat where dishes are being laid out. Flatbread, lentils, pickled onions, and at the center of it all a generous heap of chopped lettuce green, glossy and lightly soaked in vinegar. Yep, lettuce again. But here it's not magical, not symbolic, it's just food. Or is it, you nibble a leaf and it's bitter at first, surprisingly bitter. Not the watery crunch you expect from your modern grocery store versions. This is ancient lettuce. Wild lettuce. Latuca cereola. The great-grandmother of everything romaine. The bitterness isn't a flaw, it's the feature. Egyptians believed it stimulated digestion, cleared the mind, and yes, possibly, stirred desire. You glance around the fire circle. The old man chuckling with missing teeth. The teenage couple trading glances over their bowls. The baby snoring in someone's lap. This isn't just dinner. It's ritual, repetition, romance and survival folded into one. A small boy holds up a piece of bread slathered in lettuce paste. You take it, nod your thanks, and bite. Surprisingly spicy. They've mixed the lettuce with coriander and something smoky, probably fenugreek. You sit back and someone hands you a small ceramic cup filled with a warm drink. It's bitter greenish and smells faintly of crushed stems. A home remedy for headaches, the woman says, or sleeplessness. You swirl it once before drinking, and suddenly your throat warms and cools at the same time. Lettuce tea. Historians still argue whether these domestic recipes were rooted in actual pharmacology or just deeply held belief passed down through generations. But when you see how gently the leaves are handled, how reverently they're served, you start to understand. In this house, lettuce is sacred. And here's the twist, this sacred vegetable was entirely gendered in daily Egyptian life. While men were often associated with onions and garlic, strong, hot, offensive women were linked to softer greens, leeks, melons, and lettuce. Lettuce was seen as cooling, quieting, feminine. But that didn't mean weak. Women prepared it for their husbands on festival nights. Mothers brewed it into broths for children recovering from fevers. Daughters rubbed it onto their lips for moisture and shine like an early form of balm. You raise an eyebrow. Ancient Egyptian lettuce lip gloss. Put that on Etsy. There's a brief stir in the gathering, a shout from outside. A neighbor has brought news. The procession for the Festival of Men will pass by tomorrow. Excitement ripples across the mat. And just like that, the conversation pivots. Because the appearance of men doesn't just mean drums and wine and statues. It means lettuce. You watch as the matriarch rises, crossing to a covered jar near the hearth. She opens it carefully, revealing a cluster of seeds. Small, round, slightly golden. Lettuce seeds, saved from last year's festival. She tells you softly that these are no ordinary seeds. They were blessed, handled only by women, soaked under a full moon, given to the earth by hand, not tool. You get the feeling that what you're witnessing isn't just cooking. It's preservation. A kind of quiet resistance against time. And as the fire crackles low, as voices begin to fade into murmurs, you sit in the glow of their ancient kitchen and think about all the places this plant has been. On altars, in beds, in bellies. Feared, desired, dismissed. Lettuce. You glance down at the last soft leaf on your plate, its veins illuminated by firelight. A relic, a witness, a remedy, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit magic. Morning arrives quietly in ancient Egypt with pale light seeping through linen curtains and the distant sound of sandals on stone. You rise from the woven mat where you've rested joints, a little stiff-minded, a little hazy, but something in the air crackles like a day about to unfold with purpose. The Festival of Men is near. You step outside to a changed world, The village is buzzing quietly, sleepily, but undeniably. Vendors set up woven baskets of dates and almonds. Children dart between legs, their eyes wide with the promise of sweets. And there, leaning against every shaded wall, bundles of fresh lettuce crisp and upright like spears of emerald. Lettuce is everywhere. You trail behind a procession of women carrying bouquets of it, wrapped in papyrus and tied with strips of reed. They're heading toward the temple of mean god of fertility, lord of growth, and eternal wearer of perhaps the most phallic crown in the pantheon. Seriously, it's not subtle. And then you see it. The statue. Min standing tall, literally, and in front of him, a ceremonial offering table stacked high with long-stemmed lettuce. Arranged upright, their milky sap already beginning to bead beneath the sun's touch. You realize this isn't just vegetable worship. It's symbolic performance. The priestesses chant softly, swaying as they place each head of lettuce before the god. The stalks point skyward, firm and glistening, a clear echo of Min's. Well, you get the picture. Ancient Egyptians weren't exactly shy about reproductive metaphors. But the sap, that bitter white fluid seeping from the lettuce's cut stem, now that's where things get curious. Historians still argue whether the sapie's resemblance to male bodily fluids was intentional or symbolic. But either way, it earned lettuce a serious spot in Egypt's erotic toolkit. You watch as a high priest crushes a lettuce head and lets its sap drip into a vessel. It's then mixed with oils, ground dates, and crushed herbs, forming what they called a life ointment, rubbed onto the belly and thighs of those trying to conceive. Sometimes drunk by newlyweds under moonlight. You raise an eyebrow. Lettuce love potion. Who knew salad could be so sensual? A scribe beside you quietly notes the quantities used, every mixture precise, every leaf counted. For in this sacred space, lettuce is not food, it's chemistry, emotion, hope. And as the temple dancers emerge clad in white linen with gold at their wrists, they carry long lettuce stalks like scepters. They circle the altar, laughing, stomping lightly, occasionally tapping their chins with the stalks. It's rhythmic, ritualistic. A child tugs at your sleeve. You look down. He holds up a charm, a tiny amulet in the shape of, yep, a lettuce stalk. It dangles from a string made of braided date fiber. He smiles and whispers for luck and love. You take it, the charm warm from his hand. In the ancient mind, this wasn't superstition. It was science, or at least the best approximation of it they had. Observation mixed with tradition. Belief etched into generations. And just as the sun peaks, a woman beside you hums an old fertility chant. One that speaks of the river rising, the belly swelling, and the lettuce standing tall beside the grain. It's a beautiful image, really. Crops and children, soil and skin. Life springing forth in all directions. And yes, it's mildly awkward when you realize that everyone is essentially dancing around a vegetable boner. But somehow in this golden light, it feels less silly and more sacred. You begin to understand in the world of ancient Egypt, everything had layers. Nothing was just what it seemed. A head of lettuce, yes, a snack, but also a signal, a prayer, a promise. And as the final chorus of the chant echoes against the temple walls, you let yourself lean into it, the sound, the scent, the strangeness. You're not just witnessing a ritual, you're wrapped inside it. You press the lettuce amulet gently against your palm. Cool, smooth, a little absurd, but strangely comforting. Because here in the temple of desire and growth, even the humble lettuce gets to be divine. The crowd begins to thin after the festival's midday peak. You wander through the back streets of the village, still clutching your small lettuce amulet, wondering what else this leafy aphrodisiac had gotten up to over the centuries. Surely the symbolism didn't stop at temples and fertility dances. Spoiler, it didn't. You follow the scent of cooking oils and sweet herbs meandering toward a modest home nestled beside a sycamore fig tree. An older woman's skin like worn papyrus motions you over. She's brewing something thick and greenish in a clay pot lettuce again. But this time she's not praying over it, she's grinning. For nerves, she says, handing you a cup. And dreams. You take a sip. It's bitter. Earthy. The kind of taste that makes you wonder if you're about to have a vision of the Nile turning into a giant lettuce field. Turns out ancient Egyptians also believed lettuce soothed anxiety and improved sleep. In fact, certain hieroglyphic inscriptions suggest it was used in evening tonics mixed with honey or beer for taste. So maybe your bedtime chamomile tea, total amateur move. But dreams, that's the twist. There's some evidence that lettuce was believed to invite visions, especially of fertility gods, like Min or Taweret, the protective hippo goddess of childbirth. Historians still argue whether these dream-inducing claims were spiritual interpretations or the result of mild sedation from lettuce compounds. Either way, lying in a linen bed after sipping a mug of warm, sap-tinged lettuce brew might have been the ancient version of streaming weird dreams on demand. Maybe even some romantic ones if the sap symbolism was doing its job. As you sip, the woman adds with a sly wink, "Men dream of wives, women dream of twins." You chuckle, and then immediately choke a little on the lettuce brew because that bitterness, it clings to your tongue like an ancient curse. Later that day, you find yourself near the marketplace where a young healer is preparing a poultice. What's the base ingredient? You guessed it, lettuce. This time it's mixed with crushed figs and myrrh resin to treat inflammation and you wince the nether regions. Apparently it wasn't just an aphrodisiac, but also a healer of consequences from said aphrodisiac success. A full-service vegetable. The healer tells you that even pharaohs trusted lettuce-based remedies. One ancient medical papyrus, the Ebers. Papyrus includes multiple recipes involving lettuce for virility bladder troubles and even for calming the heart. Although you can't help but wonder how many of these calming the heart remedies were actually just someone trying to handle a crush on a temple dancer. Still, you have to admire the lettuce's versatility. You glance at a nearby mural painted on the wall of a tomb. It shows a nobleman reclining at a feast, in one hand a goblet of wine, in the other, a lettuce stalk, the ancient equivalent of sipping a glass of red while swiping Tinder, apparently. And here's the kicker. Some scholars believe that women in wealthier households would place lettuce leaves under their pillows or within their bed sheets before attempting conception. A quiet ritual, private, hopeful. Even Cleopatra, though not Egyptian by blood but Macedonian Greek, is rumored to have kept gardens of lettuce in her palace grounds. Not just for salads, for seduction. Now, before you get carried away with images of royal candlelit lettuce banquets, there's no direct evidence she fed it to Caesar on a date. But she could have. And honestly, you wouldn't put it past her. The more you learn, the more you realize ancient Egyptians weren't just practical, they were poetic. Their medicine was spiritual. Their vegetables were metaphors. Their sleep aids were leafy green bundles of symbolism and science, marinated together over millennia. You take another look at the cup in your hand, the dregs of lettuce tonic swirling at the bottom. You swirl it watching the green spin like a whirlpool of odd history and surprising tenderness. A villager nearby laughs loudly and you catch the tail end of a joke. He gave her 3 stalks and now they've got 5 kids and no peace. You grin. Even in antiquity, the line between romance and chaos was paper thin. So to recap, lettuce was medicine. Lettuce was mood setter. Lettuce was dream fuel. Lettuce was for the ancients a little bit magic. And for you, it's becoming a friend. An odd, bitter, leafy friend with a wildly inappropriate resume and a talent for showing up in the strangest of places. You pocket the amulet again and continue walking. The sun is beginning to dip, casting long shadows from the date palms. Somewhere in the distance, someone is humming. A lullaby? A prayer? Or maybe just the beginnings of a dream. You find yourself back along the Nile, the air cooling just enough to turn sweat into a breeze and shadows, stretching lazily across the sandy banks. As twilight settles in like a silk canopy, you follow the sound of splashing water. A group of women draped in linen robes are gathered by the edge laughing as they rinse bundles of herbs mint chamomile. And yes, again, lettuce. But this time the lettuce isn't for eating, drinking, or dreaming. It's for bathing. One woman dips a stalk into a bowl of rose water, then squeezes it slowly, the sap mixing with the floral liquid. She uses it to cleanse her skin in slow, deliberate circles. You catch her saying something under her breath. Part blessing, part flirtation, part skincare routine. Turns out ancient Egyptian beauty rituals often included lettuce-infused treatments. Not just for glow, but for fertility energy. To carry Min's blessing onto the body quite literally. Some records even hint that brides would bathe in lettuce water the night before their wedding. Smooth skin, sweet scent, sacred mojo. You dip your fingers into one of the bowls. The water is tepid, the scent faintly metallic with an herby undertone. The kind of scent that makes you feel cleaner than soap ever could. Also slightly salady. Careful, one of the women teases. Rub too much and you might attract a god. You laugh, but there's a flash in her eye, half serious. That's the thing here. Everything carries a layer of mystery. Even your bathwater might become a love potion or an invocation. You sit and watch as the women carry the last of the bowls back to their homes, the fading light catching the shimmer of wet skin and linen. In their silhouettes, you see echoes of goddess statues, confident, curved, powerful. Historians still argue whether these lettuce baths were symbolic or medicinal. Some believe the practice was tied to men worship, others to practical hygiene, amplified by myth. There's even debate over whether men participated, though some depictions show males preparing or tending to the plants, their intentions unclear. Meanwhile, nearby a group of priests tend to the remains of a temple garden. You get bold and peek over the wall. Inside, rows of lettuce precisely spaced each bed marked with sacred glyphs. These aren't crops, they're offerings. According to ancient temple protocol, priests were required to grow and maintain plants for ritual use. Lettuce, being sacred to men and associated with fertility, had entire plots reserved for it. Only pure water was used, only certain times of day for harvesting. Everything intentional. A priest brushes past you, his arms full of freshly cut lettuce. You ask him, half joking, if he's preparing a salad for the gods. He smiles faintly. Not a salad, a summons. Now you're curious. Later you observe a small altar ceremony. No pomp, no golden thrones, just a few flickering oil lamps and a stone tray. On it, 3 stalks of lettuce arranged in a triangle. The priest chants. The leaves tremble slightly, maybe from the breeze, or maybe from something else. The others bow. You feel out of place, but also calm. Like you've wandered into the warm center of a ritual older than memory. When it's over, you ask another participant what just happened. She explains that triangle of lettuce, it represents divine fertility, man, woman, and the life between. It's symbolic, yes, but also powerful. A kind of metaphysical geometry you didn't expect from vegetables. You thank her, though you're still not sure if you're impressed or deeply confused. Still, it's clear that lettuce wasn't just an ingredient. It was a language. One that spoke of desire, health, birth, and belief. One that whispered secrets between bites and baths and bedtime dreams. Later that evening, you're offered a small parchment scroll. Inside is a poem, anonymous, ancient, slightly cheeky. It reads, "He brought me stalks of sacred green and laid them by my bed unseen. The dreams they grew were lush and wide, with rivers where our twins did ride." You can't help but smile, because if you take anything from today's long leafy tale, it's this. The ancients knew how to wrap magic into the mundane. A simple leaf turned sideways and bathed in moonlight became a symbol of creation, of intimacy, of the mysteries that hover just outside waking life. And somewhere between the baths and the gardens and the triangle rituals, you realize you'll never look at a Caesar salad the same way again. You wake, if you ever really slept, still tucked in the hush of that sacred Egyptian dusk. A soft breeze glides over your skin as you follow another scent, now something rich and resinous like honey warmed over charcoal. You trail it through winding alleys until you find a quiet courtyard framed with flickering lamps and low humming voices. Tonight it's not lettuce on the altar. It's incense-pressed dates, honeyed beer, and tucked among it all a small cluster of neatly trimmed lettuce leaves. Again, always the lettuce. But this time, the conversation isn't divine or sensual, it's medicinal. A healer sits cross-legged, hands busy grinding seeds in a stone mortar. You edge closer and she nods for you to sit. "They always ask me for potions," she murmurs. But they forget the power of the greens. You glance at her mixed lettuce seeds, fenugreek, black cumin, a little wild honey. Turns out ancient Egyptian physicians, from court healers to country herb wives, swore by lettuce not only as food, not only as symbol, but as full-on medicine. The Ebers. Papyrus. Yes, you remember the one scrawled with hundreds of ancient treatments mentions lettuce repeatedly. For heart health, for stomach pain, even for baldness. Rubbed on the scalp with fig juice, apparently. It didn't always work, but it never didn't make your hair smell interesting. You listen as the healer explains her theory: lettuce cools the blood. It soothes the inner fire. For patients plagued by hot dreams or sleepless desire, a lettuce poultice placed on the forehead was like a kiss from the moon. Gentle, chilly, restoring. You wonder how much of this was placebo and how much worked. simply because belief is the strongest drug in the world. Historians still debate whether lettuce's health benefits were biologically effective or simply an extension of its mythic role. Some claim Egyptian lettuce, taller, more bitter, was closer to wild chicory packed with nutrients. Others argue the medicinal properties were mostly imagined, perpetuated by symbolic reverence. You glance around and realize the courtyard is lined with clay jars, each carefully labeled. Some contain dried lettuce leaves, others oil infusions. One small jar is marked with a glyph you recognize from earlier fertility. The healer notices you staring. That one, she says, is for new mothers, rubbed on the belly to keep it soft after birth. You ask if it works. She shrugs, enough to be remembered. It's a quiet reply, but it lingers. You continue your exploration and stumble into the quarters of a midwife. She's younger than expected, barely older than you, and sharp as obsidian. She's preparing for a birth, she says. The mother is anxious. The father, more so. Superstition runs high. So tonight she'll serve them lettuce soup infused with cardamom and pomegranate to soothe both body and soul. Not a cure, a comfort. You're invited to help. Your job, wash the lettuce, thoroughly. You plunge the leaves into a stone basin, and the coolness shocks your fingers awake. The water glints silver under lamplight. You notice how the lettuce floats barely like a raft. You keep washing slowly, gently, almost ritually. Later, the soup is served. The mother smiles, the father cries. A priest enters and whispers blessings over the bowl. So much ceremony for a plant that in your time gets wilted under ranch dressing. Still, something here feels earned. Before you leave, the midwife shares one last secret, a salve rubbed on the ankles of new brides to ease nervous trembling. The key ingredient, fermented lettuce milk. It stinks but soothes. By now, you're not even surprised. Later that night, back in your borrowed room, you rest on a woven mat, scented faintly of dried mint and linen. On a low shelf sits a basket of produce for tomorrow. Dates, lentils, and of course, lettuce. It watches you quiet and green like a folded prayer. And as your eyes begin to close, lulled by the scent of herbs and history, you think this whole journey, this whole 2-hour tumble through time, was brought to you by a salad. Who knew your dreams are pale and gentle feathers floating in a breeze until the rhythmic splash of oars against water pulls you back? You're on a barge now. A wide, flat vessel drifting lazily down the Nile, its canvas canopy flapping softly in the morning wind. The sun rises like an amber yoke over the riverbanks, painting the water gold. Beside you, crates of cargo creak with every ripple, and nestled between jars of grain and baskets of onions, you guessed it, bundles of lettuce. You stretch, yawn, and realize this is no leisure cruise. This is a market run. Today's focus, the economics of lettuce. See, in ancient Egypt, food wasn't just food, it was currency status symbol and diplomatic gesture all in one. And lettuce quietly but consistently profitable. You glance around at your fellow travelers, a farmer chewing a reed, a priest clutching a scroll, a woman counting coins with practiced flicks of her thumb. All of them eyeing the crates of lettuce like they might sprout gold. And in a way they might. Lettuce, being relatively easy to grow along the Nile's flood-fed banks, became a staple crop. Its long growing season and high yield meant surplus, an Egyptian merchant's favorite word. Historians still argue whether lettuce was a cash crop on par with flax or barley, or more of a niche luxury. But inscriptions from tomb walls and temple records show lettuce listed in offerings, paid in taxes, and even exchanged in dowries. Imagine giving someone 5 heads of romaine as part of a marriage proposal. Romantic. Maybe not. Practical? Absolutely. Your boat docks at a bustling riverside market. Bright awnings, the scent of roasted garlic and goat, the sound of deals made and broken. You step off and follow the lettuce. There, under a striped canopy, a merchant shouts above the din. Crisp and blessed by men, good for the belly, the baby the bed. A bit much maybe, but effective. You watch him haggle. 1 amphora of beer for 2 baskets of lettuce. Toss in a dried fig and it's a deal. Behind him, a chalkboard tally of trades written in ochre ink shows that lettuce is listed next to honey and fish oil. A middleweight commodity. Not cheap, not extravagant. Just steady. One woman wrapped in linen and authority approaches the stall. She's here on behalf of a noble house, she says. She needs lettuce for the week, not for eating for the bath. You blink. Turns out some elite households used lettuce in spa-like rituals. crushed into poultices, boiled into broth for skin-soothing soaks, even infused into oil. Its cool properties were believed to reduce swelling and cleanse the aura. A medieval cucumber mask, basically. You trail her back to the estate and peek through the reeds. In a courtyard shaded by tamarisk trees, servants pour warm lettuce water into clay bathtubs. The lady of the house lounges, arms draped like soft ribbon, murmuring prayers to men between sips of sweet beer. Some days you think lettuce has better job security than most humans. As evening falls, you help unload the final crate at a scribal school near the city's edge. Here, the lettuce is payment. The headmaster accepts it without a blink. He's already planning tomorrow's lesson plants as metaphor in the love poetry. You smile. Lettuce again, always lettuce. You wander through the school walls lined with scrolls and clay tablets. One student waves you over and shows you a half-finished poem. It reads roughly translated, "She is the lettuce in the sun crisp in the morning, bitter by noon, soft under my tongue come nightfall." You raise an eyebrow. He grins. Too much. Not enough, probably. As you step outside, you realize something strange for all the monumental statues, skyscraping pyramids, and divine rituals. Sometimes it's the little things, humble, everyday things that carry civilization on their leafy backs. A single lettuce leaf, a whisper of value, a commodity, a comfort, a cure, and just maybe a symbol of a people who knew that even the greenest of things could hold deep sacred meaning. You breathe in the scent of fresh earth river mist and warm linen. It's been a long day. But don't worry, tomorrow we sail again. You awaken to the soft thump of footsteps on dry earth, the muffled chatter of early risers, and the lowing of cattle tied to palm trees. The Nile glistens nearby, still half dreaming itself. And as you blink into focus, you find yourself standing outside a temple, its columns tall and fluted, wrapped in carved vines and hieroglyphs that seem to twitch with dawnlight. This is the temple of Hathor, goddess of love, music, and joy. And today you've come to see how lettuce made its way from the kitchen to the cosmos of divine rituals. Yes, lettuce humble, as it seems, made regular appearances in some of the most elaborate ceremonies of the ancient world. You follow a procession of priests, each clad in fine linen faces dusted with scented oil. They carry bundles of blue lotus trays of dates and, of course, lettuce. Not for eating, for offering. In the inner sanctum, candles flicker and drums pulse low and steady. Incense curls upward like silk smoke. A statue of Hathor looms smiling with the faintest suggestion of secrets. The priests kneel. They lay down offerings, including the crisp heads of lettuce wrapped in reed fiber cloth. Why lettuce? Well, historians still argue whether the offerings were meant to invoke fertility directly, lettuce, as a conduit to conception, or if it was more symbolic, a gesture toward nature's bounty and renewal. Some say it pleased Min, the god of virility, who had connections to Hathor through various seasonal festivals. You watch as the temple's high priest chants an invocation, flicks drops of oil from a bronze ladle, and gently brushes the goddess's lips with a single leaf. A kind of kiss, maybe. A verdant wish. The symbolism deepens. According to ancient myth cycles, Hathor once fled to the desert, and the world lost music, love, and warmth. When she was found again and returned, lettuce featured in the feasting and singing that welcomed her back. And here in this sacred hush, you feel that joy, the slow return of song. A side door opens. You slip out into a private courtyard where young acolytes are learning to paint on papyrus. Their teacher speaks slowly, repeating phrases in rhythmic cadence. You peer over their shoulders. Today's assignment: draw the sacred garden. Every single one includes lettuce. Some leaves are rendered in painstaking detail, others with wild strokes. One child's version shows lettuce towering like a tree crowned with stars. Another includes a pair of hawks perching on the stalks. The teacher doesn't correct them. Symbolism, after all, is personal. You ask the teacher how lettuce came to hold such reverence. She smiles eyes-wise. It grows where nothing else does. It cools the body. It nourishes without blood. That makes it holy. You wander through the temple's outer gardens. Their rows of lettuce glisten with morning dew. A small girl waters them from a painted jug. When she sees you, she giggles and hands you a leaf. It's warm from the sun, cool to the touch, and smells faintly of sweetness. You nibble, bitter yes but earthy, real. Further on, an older woman plucks lettuce heads into a woven basket, stacking them carefully. She's preparing for the festival of Shamu, when offerings are floated down the river to mark the end of the harvest. She tells you lettuce helps carry our wishes. It floats better than papyrus. And indeed, she's right. Later that evening, you watch the villagers gather near the docks. Lanterns bob gently on the water. Children hum lullabies. Each person steps forward and sets an offering adrift. Bits of bread, sprigs of mint, carved charms, and many, many heads of lettuce. Wrapped in cloth, tied with thread floating like dreams. It's beautiful, strange, peaceful. A man beside you, old as driftwood, chuckles. They'll end up as fish food, he says, but that's the point. Even gods need something to nibble. You smile. As the river carries the offerings away, you lie back on the sand. The stars bloom above silver and wide, and the hush of water becomes your lullaby. You close your eyes, and somewhere, maybe a goddess receives your floating gift. A whisper of lettuce. A token of love. You wake, if you can call it that, to the sound of scribes debating quietly, of course, but with enough passion to stir even the sleepiest hieroglyph. You're back within the temple this time, in its scriptorium where reed pens scratch softly against papyrus, and incense burns low and steady. The topic, lettuce. You blink, still. Yes, still. Because lettuce, it turns out, wasn't just a crop or an offering. It was the subject of entire treatises, botanical, medical, and mystical. You wander among the scrolls. They line the walls in clay jars and bundles tied with sinew. A particularly brittle manuscript catches your eye. Its title translates roughly to On the Humors of Green Life. Inside, you find references to how lettuce was classified, not just as food, but as a cooling agent in the ancient Egyptian system of bodily balance. Too much heat in the body lettuce. Trouble sleeping lettuce. Feverish with love. Definitely lettuce. One scribe voice, smooth and patient, reads aloud a passage. The green stalk opens the path to dreams, cools the fires of impulse, and grants the body peace. And you think sounds a lot like this podcast. You settle beside the reader and they continue weaving myths and facts like threads and linen. It was also believed that if lettuce was consumed before bed, it would suppress desires. But they lower their voice. If prepared in oil and wine, it could do the opposite. You arch an eyebrow. They smirk. Historians still argue whether these properties were based on observation or were simply the result of centuries of poetic association. After all, ancient medicine walked a fine line between pharmacology and metaphor. Another scroll discusses the gendered nature of lettuce. Some believed certain varieties leaned male tall firm, with a strong stalk, while others were female, soft-leafed lower, to the soil bitter and sweet. These labels influenced how they were used in healing rituals. A priest might prescribe male lettuce for vigor, female for calm. Of course, modern scholars roll their eyes at this, but hey, no one's ever written a love poem about aspirin. You wander to the back of the scriptorium where a group of young scribes are testing a pigment made from crushed lettuce leaves. It smells vaguely of cucumber and disappointment, but the color is soft and minty, and it stains the parchment with a dreamy sheen. Not for text, one says. Too faint, but good for charms. He lifts a small amulet freshly painted with a protective sigil. This one for restful sleep. Made with the juice of moon lettuce. You nod solemnly, pretending you haven't just made that up in your head. Outside, a camel groans. You follow the noise and find yourself in a side courtyard where a traveling merchant has laid out his wares. Among beads, pottery, and spices, you spotted a small vial labeled, in delicate script, lettuce oil. You unscrew the cap. The scent is light vegetal with a hint of sandalwood. For the skin and spirit, the merchant says. Cools anger, calms lovers. Makes you dream of things not yet lost. He offers you a sample. You dab it on your wrist. Instantly, a wave of coolness trickles down your spine like someone opened a window inside your thoughts. You ask if the oil's made from modern lettuce. He scoffs. No, no. Sacred strain. Grown near Dendera. Same garden as the temple priests. Watered only by moonlight and the tears of donkeys. He winks. You're not sure whether he's serious, but you buy it anyway. Back inside, a healer begins his rounds checking on patients in the temple's infirmary. One young man has been feverish for days, his cheeks flushed, eyes wild with dreams. The healer murmurs a prayer, then places a lettuce leaf on the boy's forehead. You watch. The boy sighs, his breathing slows. You ask, does that really work? The healer shrugs. Sometimes it's the prayer or the quiet or the belief. That might be the most honest thing you've heard all day. You're handed a cup of tea lettuce steeped with fennel and honey. Surprisingly, it's good. Earthy, slightly sweet with a sleepy aftertaste. You drink it down slowly, watching the shadows stretch across the floor. And then from the far wall, someone unrolls a tapestry. It's faded but vivid, a depiction of men holding a head of lettuce aloft like a trophy. At his feet, flowers bloom, cattle bow, and stars swirl above the desert. The lettuce glows like a beacon. You can't help but smile. The tapestry's inscription reads, "Life flows green through stalk and sky." The gods choose silence into song. It makes no sense, or maybe perfect sense. You lie back, hands behind your head, the scent of oil still on your wrist, and let the soft hum of history lull you back into stillness. Because sometimes a leaf is just a leaf, and sometimes it's everything. By now, your feet no longer ache either. You've gone completely numb, or you've finally achieved full immersion into the dreamlike pace of temple life. You shuffle along a cool, shaded hallway where torches flicker, and the painted gods on the walls seem to nod at you knowingly. You've become a familiar spirit here, a drifting observer on the edge of reverie. Tonight, your guide is a temple cook. Not the glamorous role you might expect to illuminate the final secrets of sacred lettuce, but trust me, this is where things get oddly delicious. He's portly, soot-smeared, and humming. His kitchen is a chaos of stone ovens, copper pots, and baskets of strange herbs. He lifts a handful of greens from a clay bowl. Moon lettuce, he declares proudly, picked under Thoth's eye, grown near tombs. You nod solemnly, that sounds about right. He's preparing what he calls the evening plate, a dish meant to calm the body, cool the inner fire, and ease dreams into alignment. It consists of poached lettuce and goat's milk sprinkled with date dust, and a few crushed blue lotus petals. "I serve it to scribes too frisky to write," he mutters. Cool the quill, calm the scroll. You're tempted to laugh, but the scent is unexpectedly soothing, like wet earth vanilla and fresh parchment. You help him stir your movements, slow and rhythmic like a lullaby in the shape of soup. As the dish simmers, he tells you about the night rituals. Every new moon temple acolytes fast all day, then break their fast with sacred lettuce. But not just any lettuce, ones grown within the temple walls, far from the gaze of peasants and sunlight. These are soft, pale varieties, almost translucent, watered with blessed river water. The first bite is always taken in silence, he says, to let the gods hear your dreams before you speak them. You ask if it works. He shrugs. It's never about working, it's about wondering. Outside, the priestesses gather. They're preparing for a minor ceremony, not the grand festivals you've seen painted on tomb walls, but a quiet rite dedicated to men and the fertility of the Nile's edge. You follow them to a stone grove carved with vines and fig trees. They carry bowls of soaked lettuce and flower garlands. No drums, no gold. Just whispered prayers and the soft slosh of water being poured onto the soil. One of the priestesses beckons you closer. She places a petal on your tongue. "Bitterness first," she says, then calm. The taste is grassy bitter, strangely cooling. You're told this isn't about lettuce at all. It's about balance, about remembering that everything that grows wilts, and everything that wilts returns. Even desire, even youth, even sleep. The others form a circle and begin chanting not loudly, but like they're humming to the plants themselves. Lettuce is passed around, not eaten, but pressed to foreheads, tucked behind ears, laid gently at the base of carved gods. This is lettuce not as food or potion, but as gesture. A green silence, a leafy lullaby. You sit in the sand back against a warm stone, watching the sky darken to plum. The stars appear slowly at first, then all at once. Somewhere in the distance, a desert fox yips. And then, almost unnoticed, a figure joins you. A young boy dressed plainly, chewing slowly on a single leaf. He says nothing for a while, just sits legs crossed. Finally, he turns and asks, "Did it work?" You blink. Did what work? He shrugs. The story. The waiting. The listening. Are you quieter now? You pause. And you realize yes. Not just quieter, but slower. Softer. Like your breath has synced with some older rhythm pulsing under sand and time. "Good," he says. "Then you can help me with the lettuce spirits." He leads you to a small mound marked with white stones. Tiny lettuce plants grow here, their leaves trembling slightly in the breeze. He hands you a reed flute and says, "Play something sleepy." They grow better when they're sung to. So you do, badly but sincerely. The stars pulse above, the plants sway. You're not sure how long you play minutes, hours, dreams. But when you stop, the plants look a little taller. Or maybe you're just finally ready to rest. You don't remember falling asleep out there in the temple grove, but somehow you're inside again, wrapped in linen as soft as whispers, and smelling faintly of dried papyrus and sandalwood. The air hums with that deep midnight hush that only sacred places and sleepy minds can conjure. A scribe you've seen before, stooped, ink-stained, and perpetually half awake, shuffles past muttering about miscopied spells and wayward dreams. He nods to you. You've made it to the quiet end, he says, and vanishes around a corner that probably wasn't there before. You're left in a narrow chamber lit by a single oil lamp. On the walls, images of lettuce are painted again and again, stylized into crowns, pyramids, and surprisingly athletic gods mid-stride. There's even one that looks like a lettuce-headed sphinx looking smug. This is the hall of remembering, someone whispers in your ear. But no one's there. You step closer to the mural. Each image you pass triggers a memory from earlier. A bowl of sugared lettuce, a golden phallus, a boat ride with tipsy nobles, that wild eye of men staring you down. The journey loops back on itself, not in a circle but a spiral, tightening, deepening, becoming dream. You arrive at the final panel. It's not painted. It's a smooth piece of polished obsidian. In its reflection, you see yourself but younger. Lighter, lettuce in your hand, a smile you didn't know you still wore. The temple is gone. You're back in the fields where the story began, under the sun that burns but doesn't hurt. The farmer you met, the one who once grew lettuce by the cubit, is there again. But now he's older, wiser. He hands you a seed. Plant this when you're ready to remember, he says. Remember what? He points to your chest, whatever was heavy there. You stare at the seed. It's small, green, and imperfect. Probably useless. But then again, that's the point. You tuck it behind your ear and keep walking. The scenery shifts once more. You're in a tiny garden inside a palace, or maybe a dream within the temple. Two acolytes, barefoot, giggling, chase each other between rows of lettuce, their laughter softer than flute music. A noblewoman watches from a shaded balcony, chewing a leaf thoughtfully. This one, she says, makes me dream of the sea. Another tries hers. Mine makes me remember kissing someone I shouldn't have. They all nod like this is perfectly normal. You glance at your leaf. It's just lettuce. But it's also a memory, a hope, a mischief, a calm. No wonder the Egyptians adored it. Scholars still argue whether the ancient obsession with lettuce was entirely about fertility, or whether it was more layered, perhaps a subtle recognition of how fragile and fleeting the spark of desire and restfulness can be. Some claim the rituals were deeply sacred. Others suggest they were just another excuse for nobles to get tipsy and make offerings shaped like, well, you know. But in the end, none of it really matters. Because here in this sleepy place where fact and dream blur, the truth is less important than the feel of it all. You're safe. You're warm. You're part of a story older than pyramids, older than papyrus, older even than dreams. And in the distance, carried on the breeze like the rustle of leaves, comes the priest's voice from long ago. Not everything sacred is loud. The temple fades. The voices hush. The lettuce sleeps. And so do you. Wind down 300 words. Now your breath is slower. The world around you is soft, like it's been gently folded in linen and tucked away on a quiet shelf. The fire has burned down to warm embers. The temple, the priest, the fields, all of them float behind your eyes now, part of that velvet tapestry where thoughts and dreams begin to merge. Let your body sink deeper into stillness, like the Nile easing into its midnight banks. Feel your fingers loosen, your shoulders grow heavy, your eyelids soften into the comfort of nothingness. The sacred lettuce, odd as it was, has done its job. It soothed restless spirits, cooled overworked hearts, and reminded a kingdom obsessed with eternity that rest is divine too. So tonight, carry that green calm with you. Let it press gently against your chest like a leaf between pages, holding space for stillness. There's nothing you need to remember now. No facts to review, no jokes to explain, no ancient pharaohs to impress. You're simply here, floating on the edge of sleep, where the air is cool and the earth hums beneath you like a cradle song. Let your last thoughts drift gently downstream. Let your heartbeat whisper like wind through leaves. And if in your dreams you find yourself wandering back to that quiet temple with its echoing halls and strange murals, just remember to bring a flute. Sweet dreams.